I learned that if I just really listened carefully to my buyer and understood what they wanted and fed that back to them, like directly related to what my company did, that I could win this business practically every time.
Everything leads to growth with the National Association of Sales Professionals. The Leads to Growth podcast with the National Association of Sales Professionals provides in-depth discussions, sharing the best sales, prospecting, influence, and communication skills, as well as sales training techniques to take your professional sales career to the next level.
Welcome back to another Leads to Growth podcast with the National Association of Sales Professionals. I'm Chris McCoy. We've got Rick Middlemass here again, and we are welcoming the queen of personas, the queen of buyer personas here, Adele Revella. Really excited to have you here, Adele. Let me tell you a little bit about Adele if you don't already know who she is. She's got a book in the top 5 business books by Fortune magazine. Adele's the CEO of Buyer Personas Institute and author of Buyer Personas, How to Gain Insight into Your Customers' Expectations, Align Your Marketing Strategies, and Win More Business. This was named a top 5 business book by Fortune 500 magazine. Adele's unique perspective derived from decades of experience as a sales and marketing executive, trainer, researcher, and entrepreneur. And just a beautiful mission to change the way people think. Thank you, Adele, for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Chris and Rick. So happy to be here.
Couldn't think of a better guest to have, Rick. I think our listeners are going to love her, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've got a great chance to catch up a little bit and talk some buyer personas and some recent events lately. Really want to talk about today how buyer personas influence and interact with sales, how these two interact together. I know I've already had some just changes of thinking since we've begun our discussions. So I'd love for you to kind of share maybe one, how did you pick up this challenge of really bringing buyer personas and a change of thinking, and how does this interact with sales?
Yeah, well, so I'm actually a decades-long marketing executive and marketing professional, but I did at one point in my career carry a bag for a year. And I also was head of sales for one of the tech companies where I worked. And, you know, during the short time that I was a sales rep, I mean, a year, what kind of credentials is that with the people listening to this call? Zippo. But what I was over 400% of quota that first year. And what I learned really quickly, and I think it was kind of baked into my personality by, I don't know, probably some childhood incident or something, is that I learned that if I just really listened carefully to my buyer and understood what they wanted and fed that back to them, like directly related to what my company did, that I could win this business practically every time. And so fast forward a couple of decades, and now I'm running a training company. This was actually about early 2000s, and I was tasked with building a class on product marketing. And so 1 hour of the class was all about buyer personas and this really simple idea that marketers, shockingly, ought to have the opportunity to know buyers, maybe even at least as little as a little bit close to what a sales rep gets to do one-on-one. Now, the difficulty, there's lots of things, and we can get into that more. But the first challenge is that salespeople have the skill and the opportunity and training to listen to one buyer at a time, and marketers don't have skills, opportunity, or training, and they have to do this for a market full of buyers. And so I took some of the essentials of what I'd learned in my best days as a sales rep and running sales teams, and I said, what if we could build a methodology that's really not like what anybody's thinking about buyer personas? I really want to change people's thinking about personas today because the common way people talk about that is all wrong. But what if I could really get insight into what buyers want from that sales and marketing engagement? Not just who is the buyer, but, you know, just like I magically could get to a high level of quota, I've never sold a darn thing. and do that so fast by just getting this very basic principle around know your buyers, what your buyers want in this scenario, in this buying decision. And so I set out about 20 years ago just to build a product marketing class and did, and I sold that business about in 2010. And then I started this company to go deep, to say, I want to train the world to understand how, at a deep level, really insightful level, what buyers want when they engage with your sales and marketing effort.
Wow, I love that. I love that. Now, how do we go about finding out what our buyers want? I mean, I know there's some simple answers to that, right?
Yeah, the really simple answer is ask them, right? I mean, but, and then there's all the hard part that comes after that, because you have to get buyers, and again, across the market, to open up and share what they want from the buying experience. And so what we perfected over, it's been almost a decade now since we started the company, is a way to get buyers on the phone who have, within the last year, had the buying experience. They've been through all the snakes and ladders of trying to figure out, like, okay, how do I define my problem in a way that I can find a solution that's a fit for what I need? And then how do I find the companies that might fill that need? And then how do I sort through all of these companies? Frankly, a lot of it's just noise, to get to the truth about what's really going to solve my problem. And we figured out a method, a very unique method to interview buyers and get to that truth. And get buyers to open up, be candid with us, not like give us all the, it's all about price, it's all about features, none of that.
Right.
Over, thousands of interviews, hundreds of studies right now, it's never about price, guys. And you guys know that it's about value, right? And so how do you get buyers to open up and talk about a real buying experience they've had in your category and tell you how they measure value? And that's just an example.
I really like that. And Rick, I apologize. I've been known to steamroll Rick over questions over these podcasts. So Rick, I promise I'll give you one of the next questions coming up.
Yeah, try to butt in there a little bit.
Real quick, Adele, you mentioned something that I wanted to touch on. You mentioned sales experience, not what they want from the end product or the end service, but really what they want from the experience of the sales process. That seems like a very unique differentiator. Whereas most people, if I had an opportunity to talk to an audience, my first inclining, I think, would be, all right, what products do you want? Not what kind of experience do you want through the sales service? Have you noticed that being a big differentiator in the way people address things out there in the market?
Exactly. This is a competitive advantage to know what your buyers want across all the moments that matter in their buying experience. Because if you see anything architected around the buyer's journey, what it usually is, some version of your sales process or your marketing assets lined up against some funnel. This is absolutely useless to understand the buyer's mindset and their concerns and all the stuff that's going on in the background that you as a sales organization never even see. That's really causing them pain around getting to a way to achieve a goal. Frankly, every buyer's, they're either trying to solve a problem or make something better. And they're obsessed with solving that problem or making something better. And you can sit in a room and reverse engineer that goal based on what your products do. Guess what? You're making shit up. You really are. This is what I call MSU. You're sitting around making stuff up. I'll use a better word. Sorry. And
these are salespeople.
And instead of, like, what if we just ask the buyers?
Yeah, it's a novel idea. I got one more question. So I got a lot more, but how do you avoid all the biases as well and really get these buyers to tell you all of that information and just really give you all that?
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot to say. That's part of why I wrote a book about this. I mean, trust me, I never wanted to write a book. It was the worst year of my life, honest, hands down, the worst year of my life. But I wrote the book because in a format like this, which I do a lot of public speaking, I could never get to enough detail to get people over all the mistakes and snakes and ladders that they run into doing this. However, so I'll give you the brief an answer as I can, which is when we do these interviews, they're double blind, which means the people we're interviewing don't know who our client is, and the client never finds out who we interviewed. And so, and we can assure the people we're interviewing of that. We say, look, the only way our client's ever going to see this data is in aggregate with the results of the other interviews. Now, we're going to use verbatim quotes from the interviews, but they're going to be all mixed up. You know, interview 1 talked about this, interview 5 talked about this, and here we're going to put those together and we're going to see some patterns. And that's how we build personas. But when buyers, and somebody just asked me on a call earlier, how long are these interviews? And I say, we schedule them for 30 minutes, but the average length is close to 45 because we can't get these people off the phone. I mean, this is, and this is the dirty little secret. Buyers are frustrated beyond belief with the buying experience. And you guys, think back to your own buying experience. When you've had some very high consideration buying decision you had to make, and I'm not talking about going to the grocery store and getting a carton of milk. I'm talking about something that it took you a lot of time to go through that evaluation. And think about all those frustrating moments. Now imagine that somebody got on the phone with you and said, I just want to hear you talk about this. And the only scripted question is this one. Take me back to the day when you first decided that you had a goal to do this, and tell me what happened. And now we have somebody on the phone who's an expert listener who just walks you through very slowly, asking lots of follow-up questions using your words. So no surveys, no scripts. This is just a conversation, and walks you through everything you did, everything you thought about. And we can't get these people off the phone. They won't stop talking.
I believe it. Yeah, I love it. I mean, it makes sense. I can remember just the last major transaction. I bought a vehicle not too long ago and spent a lot of time in the process of what I was going to do. Got there to the dealership and the experience was horrific. Horrific. I literally went to the next dealership down. I'd never been there, never even inquired or thought about buying a car from them. And because the experience was so much more warm and welcoming and what I was expecting, I ended up buying a car that day.
Exactly.
I love that.
And sometimes I've had a few podcasts where we've done little mock role play interviews where I've walked people through that. And I mean, there's a lot. Cisco's on your shirt, Rex. Like, Cisco's a big client of ours. And you would think that people buying routers and switches and firewalls wouldn't get real worked up about that. Guess what? They do. Because for that buyer, and I've had people say, oh, you work with, like B2B, like, security stuff and all this. How emotional could those buyers be? You know what? Really emotional, because there's a lot at stake. If I mess this up, I could lose my job. This is your buyer talking, you guys. I'm telling you, I could lose my job. I could affect my career. It could affect the whole company. Their stock could go down. And so buyers get, if there's a decision where your buyers have really invested a lot in that, they want to talk about it. And wow, now you can't be the sales rep. So this is the caveat. When you guys said, I'm going to be talking to salespeople today, guess what? The one guy that can't do these interviews is the sales guy.
Pull the question out of my mouth.
It can be somebody in marketing. It can be a third party like us, but it cannot be the sales guy because, the people, and by the way, the best data comes from interviewing people who didn't choose you. And that buyer's not going to talk to you, and they're not going to be open or candid with you. I mean, this is part of the problem. According to Gartner, buyers are engaged with sales and marketing with the vendor for 32% of their journey. So part of the problem is there's 68% of the journey you know nothing about, no matter how good a listener you are. And then the 32% your buyer is involved with you, they are not sharing this with you. They are not going to tell you. And so, it is about getting somebody who can be an unbiased listener. And so that can be the right person inside your company who's trained in this method, or it could be a third party like us. But it can't be the sales guy doing these interviews. Sorry, guys. Sorry, sales guys. I know.
No, I wouldn't imagine a sales leader or anybody connected to that salesperson would have any luck just because of that personal filter that's added.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like how also that you take the buyers back to that inception, like the most important time to capture. I mean, like we always talk about, when do you want to capture a client? Like when he's ready to buy, right? Well, not really when he's ready to buy, because he's had a lot of time between he's ready to buy and when he actually thought he might need something, right? And that time in between there is such a valuable time to get involved in that process.
And then we walk buyers back. We say, because buyers, well, we decided we needed this and this and this, benefit, benefit, benefit. And we'll say, seems like you would have needed that benefit like 3 months before that or a year before that. Talk to me about like really what led up to that moment. And, as a sales and marketing professional, what I want to do is I want to understand that moment, and I want to build that moment for more buyers, right? I want to put more energy into those moments that lead up and that trigger buyers' decision to adjust, to change the status quo. Because the status quo is always the buyer's preference. So we want to get people on the phone who have changed the status quo, and then we want to understand from their own experience what got them off the fence and got them out of their comfort zone and said, nope, I got to find the budget, find the time to go make change happen, to go buy something.
Like the gatekeeper to all the buyers out there. I love it. And it's a simple gate, right? It's look, go ask and take some steps to find out what they're saying. Now, where do you come up with all these people? I mean, where do you find all these people that you're getting all this valuable information from?
Yeah, so we recruit for them, and it's actually the most challenging part of the work that we do. But we work with third-party recruiting partners all over the world who have databases of the right people, and then we pay them to talk to us for 30 minutes. So sometimes we run LinkedIn campaigns to find them. We use whatever technique we can, and we don't just do B2B. We do high consideration B2C. Something like we did a study around senior living, like mom's got to go somewhere. She can't live at home anymore. We've done high-end vacations. We've done some investment planning services. So it's any place where the buyer, and then we have to go different places. But the answer is that we primarily use recruiting partners, and we pay them to find the people. And it's a lot like a sales quota. We say we need people that match these demographic attributes, and who have within the last year made this kind of buying decision, and we pay them a commission, if you will, to find those people and schedule an interview with us, and then we pay the participants pretty good rate to talk to us for 30 minutes.
Nice. A little money always leverages some time, doesn't it? And then once, like you said, once you get them started and they're able to talk about what they want to talk about. And that made me very interesting too. I was reading some of your bio, and we often talk about the I've heard it called the platinum rule now. Not the golden rule. The old golden rule is treat others like you'd like to be treated, but treat others how they'd like to be treated. And how can you really do that if you've not taken the time to really hear and understand them and remove all the biases? That's what's really interesting to me as well, is this double blind, not knowing who's doing it, talking about the inception time really gets them to remove all the biases of their decision making.
Yeah. And bias is such a problem. And traditional market research is so biased. I mean, if we build surveys, we build them around, here's all the things I want to know. We got to write questions, and then we even write the answers for them, like A, B, C, or D, and the answers are all what we think the answers should be. And then, we do focus groups, and we get people in the room, and we get them all arguing with each other, and they all arrive at a consensus based on who's got the loudest voice in the room. And it's like, or sometimes people will do interviews, but it's very traditional interviews with people hypothesizing about what they would do in a particular situation. Also, even then, pretty scripted, maybe there's some places to probe, versus getting people on the phone who have had the experience and getting them to describe it.
Yeah, without leading. Yeah,
no leading questions. We don't say, well, what did you think about our event? What did you think about our marketing campaign? Well, guess what? If you're a nice person, I'm going to tell you what you want to hear.
Exactly. So understanding these personas, I would imagine, has a lot of influence on this whole beautiful world of content marketing nowadays. And also, we've talked to a lot of people about content for sales. So how does understanding these personas really help the sales and marketing teams align? It seems to be a really big staple.
Yeah, so this is such a heartfelt topic for me, because if there is such a lack of alignment between sales and marketing, isn't there? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it just looks like this big canyon, and sometimes it actually looks like a battle zone, but it's never a good thing, or really rarely is it a good thing. And so, what, coming mostly from the marketing side, I think the companies have tried to solve this problem by incenting marketing based on revenue and all that sort of stuff. And then it actually only made things worse, because now we're battling over who generated the lead and who's accountable for the lead. And I'm like, what if, and this is my theory, what if we just aligned around what each of our roles is with respect to creating that buying experience? Mm. And we have very different roles. So marketing's trying to influence a market full of buyers and get them to come into and get us included in the buyer's consideration set. We got to get included.
Yep.
And then sales is trying to take the buyer, from that consideration step through to closure. But if we had a really clear picture of what the buyers wanted throughout that journey, throughout that experience, then this seems like, and now we're not arguing over who generated the lead, or is it a marketing qualified lead or a sales qualified lead, or all that noise. We're just focused on knowing what buyers want, continuously learning what buyers want, and continuously avoiding all the things that annoy buyers, and avoiding, frankly, all the investment that the company's making in stuff that has no value to the buyers. None, zero. And if you really look at any of the stats, and everybody's got different numbers, I don't care what they are, look at all the content marketing is producing that the buyers don't consume, and the salespeople don't care about. It's just, so to me, it just seems so automatic that the one thing sales and marketing have in common is that we both need to persuade people to do business with us. And if we could align around what it takes to persuade people to do business with us by listening to what buyers want to have happen to be persuaded, then we'd be aligned. Is that too obvious, or?
No, not at all. It's a message that has to happen. Is it too obvious to talk to your customers to find out what they really want? There's a lot of obvious things, I think, that most of us take for granted on a daily basis. Yeah. It's just part of the game, and you can get caught in thinking that people. This happens in a day-to-day life.
Well, because it's true. Because salespeople, and this is what I tell marketing all the time, your salespeople know they're better than anyone, but they don't know the market full of buyers, and they don't know the people who aren't in your sales pipeline.
Yeah.
Influence. And then what they don't know too is all the things that's going on in the background between the buyer and your competitors. So in sales, and frankly, and I'll to tell you that the buyers lie to the salespeople about why they chose your competitor. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you didn't do that other dealership, you go back there and tell them, look, you guys lost this business because you were rude to the dealership. You didn't do that,
I know
right?
you're beeping a little bit out on us, but I think you asked me about my car dealership experience. Did I go back and let them know? Yes. So I went there on a Wednesday. I went back to sign the paperwork and to get everything done on the following Monday or Tuesday. I even called on Monday to make sure that everything was done. Everything was okay. I'd been talked to 3 different people. I got in on Tuesday and I was given the bait and switch.
Yeah.
We can't get that done. And so after I went and spoke with the manager, I gave him one more chance. I went and spoke with the manager and said, here's how I'm feeling. Here's the experience that I'm having right now. And I'm thinking about this in a different way now because of the way you've talked. And here's how I feel, but here's how I would like to feel. And here's the experience I'd like to have to buy a car from you. Then they gave me somebody else who tried to shuffle me around again. And I went back to the manager. I said, listen, I'm leaving now. You lost my business. I'm going to go buy a car at whatever dealership is the next one up the road. And that was it.
Good for you.
And
Good for you.
But it's so true that often we think we know what's best. We think we know what they need to hear. We think, and we don't ask enough, right? This is,
Yeah.
This is never more relevant than in sales. Rick, I know you talk to a lot of coaching calls every day. You talk to a lot of our members on a daily basis. What is a question you think that would add some value to our member base right now?
Let me share this a little bit. So thinking from the perspective of the sales professional, right, what we've just been learning from Adele, I'm thinking now we've been talking about Cisco back when I was selling Cisco. What opportunities do I have as a sales professional listening to this podcast where I can get some information from my clients without me, the salesperson, asking them, right? I used to talk a lot to the technicians for my previous clients in technology and learn what's being talked about in the company that nobody's telling me about, right? What are the technicians hearing when they're in doing installations, maintenance day to day, kind of the water cooler talk, if you will. It's very valuable. So if I'm a sales professional listening to this podcast right now, who can I ask? Who else is talking to either my prospect client or someone who talks to them where I can find a little bit more information? So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Great question,
listening to you, Adele.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so that's a good idea. You're, getting like an SC, a technical sales engineer who might just be around the water cooler and accidentally overhear things, or, but see if you can't. I'm really talking about. I want to just make a distinction right now between the buying experience and the using experience, and because they are two different things. And what happens after I sell the deal, which is mainly where I think that might occur the way you were describing it at least, is great. And we need that feedback because that often goes back to product management and affects the way the product's packaged up or sold or implemented or installed. I just want to draw a distinction between that and understanding what happens before that close date, before that implementation date. So I draw the distinction between buyer personas and user or customer personas, two different things, both critically important. Our focus happens to be on the buyer persona. Now, you may have a pre-sale technical guy who's involved. I mean, that happens a lot where there's an SC that's involved in the sales scenario. So in that case, by all means, see if that SC has heard anything or learned anything, good idea. But it's still not going to get to the crux of what I was talking about. So here's another idea. Go to your marketing team and say, I heard this podcast and I'd really like to make available to you, marketing team, a list of people who we didn't win the business. And I'd like you to go interview these people and understand what really matters to them. And so see if your marketing people can do this type of interview. And that's part of why I wrote the book. I mean, it's $12 on the digital copy. Unlike most business books, I wrote down in that book, when I wrote the book in 2015, everything I know about how to do the interviews and aggregate the insights. It's a how-to book. So that, or we have an online course that they could attend and get them to do the interviews to get to this insight. Because here's the raw truth. No one in the normal course of business is going to get the depth of insight that's possible if someone will just get people on the phone and use the skill to ask them to walk them through the buying experience. And when we train marketers to do this, you know what they usually say? Salespeople won't let me talk to the customers. They won't let me talk to them, or if they do let me talk to them, they only give me the guys that love them the most, like they'll give me my best customers. This is not a success story, you guys. This isn't a case study interview. Absolutely. I want to talk to the people that we didn't win. And so that would be my best advice, Rick, is go to your marketing team and say, hey, guys, you guys need to go interview some buyers and understand what they're thinking about.
So that's a great point. So salespeople listening right now, the challenge now, this is going to be a bit uncomfortable because if I'm a salesperson, I lost a sale. I don't necessarily want to be acknowledging and telling people about it. But maybe let's challenge. This could be it's going to feel uncomfortable, but this could be a fantastic thing to do to learn to approach that same type of a buyer in a more effective way the next time. So
that's great. That's a great point too, Rick. It's short-sighted to think that this is going to hurt you in a negative way. This is going to help you in a positive way. When you go to a manager or a leader and let them know that you want to learn from the deals that you lost, and that's the kind of person I want to promote up my levels all day long.
And we're going to tell the marketing team, this is not about one interview at a time. So this isn't about saying that Joe lost that deal and here's why. That's right. A different kind of thing. This is about doing this across many customers to find patterns and trends around what we as a company and across many salespeople are doing that we could do better to win more business.
Through the sales experience.
Yeah. So yeah. It's funny though, I just read as I was eating lunch an article about how critical feedback, it was in yesterday's Wall Street Journal, about how, the people who look for and accept negative feedback as a strength. And that is the people that succeed look for critical feedback.
I love that. And that is just a beautiful note to close on. Adele, thank you so much for your time here. This has been really amazing, eye-opening. I know I'm getting the book and calling our CMO Dave with some lost clients tomorrow, or maybe even after this call. I'd like to ask you one more question for our listeners. Where can they learn more from you? Where can they follow you? Where can they find you? Where's that book at?
Well, buyerpersona.com is our website, and so you could certainly go there, and there's obviously links to buy the book at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And then, I speak at a lot of events. I have done a lot of other podcasts, so you could Google my name and look for some of those things. But Facebook at Buyer Persona, Facebook Buyer Persona. We're kind of Twitter at Buyer Persona. I mean, we're all the social media buyer persona people. So
great. And I think we're gonna have to talk online about getting some content for our blog community. I think they would really dig some stuff from you. So
great.
Adele, really, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. Rick and I truly appreciated you. Listeners, enjoy. This is the gold that you get from aces that we bring on this call and on this podcast, and looking forward to the next ones. Make sure you go check out our last podcast and our next podcast. And that leads to growth with National Association of Sales Professionals. Thank you all for being here.